Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 156 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I cannot be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think will be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today and throughout the course of this week, I am going to be discussing with you the FIRE movement. And maybe you've heard of the FIRE movement, maybe you have not. But the FIRE movement is the Financial Independence Retire Early movement. And this has become very big among millennials. And so I want to talk about throughout the course of this week what it is, what it takes, what you need to do if you want to take this type of route, some pros and cons of the route, and things of the like. And that is what I'm going to start with today. I'm going to start with what are the pros and the cons of the FIRE movement. And so we're going to dig into that and much, much more throughout the course of this week. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, then be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you create a plan that is specific to you and your family situation and need somebody to help you stay accountable to a financial plan over the long term, I can help you do that. Just go to my website, www.mnowithdylan.com. Click on the Work with Dylan tab, and you can choose the financial coaching session type that would work best for you, and we can begin pushing towards your long-term financial goals together. So the FIRE movement. What is this? What is this about? What are we talking about here? What does it mean in a more specific nature? But like I said a moment ago, FIRE, F-I-R-E, Financial Independence Retire Early Community or movement, right, is a movement where people attempt to gain enough wealth to retire far earlier than the traditional timeline of retirement. And this is a very admirable movement. It's a very admirable cause, right? People are trying to get so on top of their financial situation that they can retire extremely early and not have to continue to live paycheck to paycheck their whole life or continue to even work a 9-to-5 job in the way that they had their entire life. And so the FIRE movement is something that it comes up in a bunch of different forms, and we'll talk about several of those throughout the course of this week. But basically what people are trying to do is they are trying to amass enough of a nest egg to where they can live off of that nest egg for the rest of their life, and they're trying to do it far faster than the average individual will do it, and even further than that, the above average individual. The above average individual in America is the individual who is actually saving money for retirement, who is actually having money to retire on. So that above average individual who is retiring at 60 or 65 and has a million, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million in a nest egg, that is an above average individual. But these people are trying to even beat those individuals out, because these are the top of the top as far as saving goes, as far as investing for their future, and as far as starting early goes. And so these are people that can really teach you a lot of good money habits. But is everything about the FIRE movement good? I don't know. We will have to dig into that in today's episode. Now, people who involve themselves in the FIRE movement and take this idea to heart and want to retire early, many of them are trying to devote themselves to saving at least half of their income. And when I say save, I don't just mean put in a savings account, even though I'm sure some is being devoted to that. I'm talking about investing at least half of their income. So these are people who are extremely serious about their savings. And they're not always people who make the most money. They aren't always people who make, $150,000, $200,000 a year. These are typically people who make less than $100,000 a year, married couples working together typically, who will try to amass enough wealth to not have to work their entire life and to retire early. And in order to do that, when they're choosing to do so by, which is typically by their late 30s or early 40s, then they have to be saving these large amounts because whenever you take time off of your side when it comes to investing, right? Whenever you shorten the time horizon, the contributions must increase to keep up with the amount of net worth you want to amass. Because if time is on your side, you can invest less and allow that money to grow over time. But if time is not on your side, if you have less time, then you just have to invest a ton more in order to get to where you want to get financially. And so they have to do that. They typically use dividend paying investments and different types of passive income streams. And I've talked about passive income before, not necessarily in a way where they don't manage their investments, but just a way that they can get income off of their investments without having to, go sell anything, or without having to go actually harvest the income off of the investment. Instead, they can just be receiving the income off of dividend paying stocks, off of rental real estate, off of interest from bonds, things of the like. And then accumulating the amount of wealth needed to live as long as they need to live in retirement, because their retirement timeline is far longer, right? For most people, retirement, if you retire at age 60, you're looking at a 20 to 30 year retirement typically, right? But for these people who are retiring in their 30s and 40s, they may be looking at a 40 to 50 year or more retirement. And so they have to create income off of their nest egg for that long. And so that becomes far more difficult for them to do. And so in order to do this, right, it's a considerable feat. Not everyone who aims at financial independence, retire early, is going to succeed. But the timeline differs significantly from the conventional one. And most people who attempt to retire early in the FIRE movement can still retire far earlier than most individuals, but it's all requiring a plan. It's all requiring them to plan out what they are going to do with their income, how they're going to invest, how they're going to live off of what they have invested in the long term, and then at what point can they sit it out? At what point can they stop working and enjoy their long retirement? So in order to get our minds kind of wrapped around this idea of the FIRE movement and how much more radical it is relative to traditional retirement, let's look at the timeline of traditional retirement versus the FIRE movement. And so most people who work are expecting to retire somewhere around the age 65 or so, which is when traditional retirement accounts and benefits start to kick in or have already kicked in. And for those born after 1960, Social Security benefits can begin at age 60, but full Social Security benefits don't kick in until age 67. Specialized tax incentive retirement accounts, so we've talked about these, right? 401ks, IRAs, anything Roth, things of that type. They carry age-related restrictions, which have a de facto impact on your retirement age, right? If you're saving into these retirement accounts, they're naturally going to have an effect on your retirement age because if you can't access the money until a certain age, then you're not going to be attempting to do so. You're not going to be trying to retire if you can't get your hands on the money that you've set aside for yourself. And so for most, that's 59 and a half for the IRAs and the 401ks and things of the like. And then obviously any type of traditional accounts also have obligatory withdrawals, these required minimum distributions, RMDs, that begin at age 72. Now they used to begin at age 70 and a half, but now begin at age 72. And so these are things that all fall into the traditional retirement timeline. Now, if you're going from retiring between 60 and 65 or 60 and 67, and you change that into retiring between 35 and 40 or 35 and 45, that is going to vastly change the way that you invest. It's going to vastly change the way that you put money away for your future, because now instead of looking at all of these tax advantaged investment accounts, not that they can't still be useful to you if you are trying to be a part of the FIRE movement, not that they can't be useful, but they're not going to benefit you as much as they will the individual who is willing to retire later, because you are going to have restrictions on your money. So you're going to have to find other ways to invest, other ways that you're willing to go about investing that's still going to maximize any tax advantages that you can get your hands on while still investing in the most efficient and effective way possible. And it's all about being effective when you're trying to be a part of the FIRE movement, because you want every dollar that's going in to an investment account to be growing for you and growing relatively aggressive. And being able to create money for your future. You're not trying to waste money investing. You're trying to invest money so that it will grow and so that it will turn into a nest egg that is worth living on over the long term. And so these timelines of retiring look way different. And the FIRE movement is just all about breaking the mold. It's all about breaking the mold from this traditional timeline and going into this new idea of reaching financial freedom, true financial freedom, being free from the need to work, free from the need to rely on any income that's being brought in from a workplace, and being susceptible to the risk of losing a job and things of the like. It is taking that away and saying, let's reach true financial freedom, and let's live autonomously on the money that we have set aside for ourselves. And a lot of this FIRE community, it comes out of the financial crisis, right? A lot of millennials were coming of age during the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, 2009. And they saw how fragile everything was, how easy it was for you to lose jobs, how easy it was for things to just collapse. And they didn't want to be susceptible to their jobs collapsing out from under them. They didn't want to just live their whole life in order to get to retirement at age 60 or 65, and then not really have much to show for it, or the market collapsed then, and they don't know what to do. They wanted to take a hard stance and be able to live financially free from the get-go, and live financially free in the truest sense as early as possible. So it's very admirable. But what we are interested in today, right? I gave you a whole intro to the FIRE movement, what it is, how it compares to some traditional timelines. But what we are also interested in, and really want to focus on today, are the pros and the cons of the FIRE movement. Because just like anything else, right, there are downsides to the FIRE movement. It is a great idea, right? I want to start by that. It's a great idea, at least in my view, and it is a great way to work good money habits. But just like anything else, it has its downsides. And if those downsides aren't correctly addressed in your life, then being a part of the FIRE movement might not be what is best for you. And so let's dig into these pros and cons. I'll start with the pros, and then we'll end on a sour note with some of the cons. But just to preface everything, I do think it's a good idea. I do think it's something you could be a part of, but it takes some real serious work. So here we go. What are the pros of the FIRE movement? Well, the first pro is having more flexibility with your time. People who retire early, they have nothing but time on their hands. If you retire at 35, 40 years old, you have nothing but time on your hands statistically, right? There's no telling when we'll all be off of this earth, but you have nothing but time. You have so much time to do all the activities that you always wanted to do. You have all of the time to spend with your family and your friends, and to be able to do the things you always wanted to do, go the places you always wanted to go. And obviously, if you are a FIRE movement individual, you likely have the money to do some of these things as well. And so you have created a lot of flexibility for yourself when it comes to time. You can choose to do just about anything that you want to do with the time you have left. And this is a blessing and a curse, and we'll look at why here in a moment. But if you have more flexibility with your time, just think about how much of a difference you can make in the lives of others. Think about how you can give your time for others. Think about how you can use your time to speak into the life of your family members and your friends. Think about how you can use your time just having fun, enjoying yourself, doing all the things you always wanted to do. The FIRE movement provides you with that flexibility and provides you with a lot of undisturbed time that you can use as you move forward in your life. So that is a huge benefit of the FIRE movement. The next pro is that you can build a meaningful, passion-filled life. So given that you have more flexibility with your time, right, what the FIRE movement allows you to do is to decide what you're passionate about and go after that thing. Because even though we are retired, right, at 35, 40, 45 years old, that doesn't mean that we can just sit on it, or that we should just sit on it, right? We should go out and find what we are passionate about and do that thing, right? You can live a meaningful life. You can do things that are meaningful and things that you care about. And you can do it for little or no money and be able to still live the life that you've always wanted to live. Because that is a big dilemma that we all come across in our financial lives in most places, because a lot of people want to do something that they're passionate about. The problem is that either what they're passionate about is not hiring, they don't have the skills for the things that they're passionate about, the thing that they're passionate about doesn't make enough money And so they're, afraid to leave something that's really good and paying them really well to go to that thing that doesn't pay as well. Or maybe the thing that they're really passionate about is really volatile and has, a lack of job security. So they don't want to go into that field if they think that they could lose that job. But the FIRE movement takes all of those things away. If you are living a true financial independence, retire early lifestyle with that type of mindset, then you are not necessarily worried about anything getting in the way of you being able to fulfill your passions, to do the things that you're passionate about, right? If you've always wanted to do mission work, if you and your family feel called to do that, then guess what? You can go do that. If you've always wanted to learn a new skill, do something new, do something that you've never done before and take the time in order to learn it, then guess what? You can do that if you are passionate about that thing. And so you can begin to build a meaningful life in a way that maybe while you were in the workforce, while you were working 9 to 5, while you were doing things on somebody else's schedule that you could not do. And so the FIRE movement provides this for you, and this is a big positive when it comes to the decision making of, should you be a part of this FIRE community, this FIRE movement, or should you not? But it sounds like something that would really drive people into this movement in droves. Now, another pro of the FIRE movement is that the FIRE movement requires that you live below your means. And I know that we have talked a lot about living below your means when it comes to the financial action plan, when it comes to getting out of debt, when it comes to saving money, when it comes to investing for your future. And so I know we've talked about living below your means, but in order to be a part of this FIRE movement, in order to do this, financial independence, retire early thing, then you have to be extremely frugal. Right? You have to really flex your frugality, because the ability to save, 50+% of your income in order to retire at a very early age is, it's hard to come by. It's hard to come by that ability. And that ability comes from learning to live below your means and learning to do so in radical ways. Whereas most people of working age, they have this lifestyle creep, right? Lifestyle creeps up on them. They want to, as they're making more money, they want to drive nicer cars. They want to live in bigger homes. They want to, buy nicer clothes. They want to do all of these things as their income is increasing. And subsequently, they're not increasing their long-term wealth building. They're not increasing what they are going to need to live on later on. But people who are in the FIRE movement, as they make more money during their working lifetime, and I mean, during their 9 to 5 lifetime, then they have to get to a point where as they're making more money, every extra dollar that they have is being thrown into savings, into investing for their future. And this is a great trait to have, because once you retire early, then the whole point is, do I have enough money in order to sustain myself for the rest of my life? Do me and my family have enough to where I can still live and live comfortably and not worry about running out of money? Well, a good trait of somebody who won't run out of money in retirement is frugality, right? Is living below their means. And if you can already do so in a radical way, and you've already really bought into that ideology, then it's not likely that you get into retirement and then blow everything that you have. So that is a big pro, and it's a characteristic of people in the FIRE movement, but it is a pro of what you must become, or what you do become as you are a part of this movement. You do become more frugal. You do become somebody who is willing to live a financially free lifestyle, because you are actually putting all the things in place that I talk about in the financial action plan all the time. And then lastly, a pro of the FIRE movement is simply less stress, right? BlackRock, they did a survey and they said money is one of the leading worries for many Americans, and gaining enough wealth to comfortably live without working would thus wipe out a major cause of stress, which could lead not only to more enjoyable lives, but healthier lives as well. And so to decrease your stress, to not have to worry about where your next dollar is coming from, to not have to worry about saving money for your kids' college, to not have to worry about saving money for retirement, to not worry about, do we have enough money to do X, Y, Z, is a huge deal. And the FIRE movement provides that, because The way that this should work, the way it should work when you get into early retirement is your nest egg should be creating a certain amount of income or a certain amount of growth every single year that you can live off of that growth and never lose the nest egg, and hopefully even grow the nest egg a bit over time. And if you can comfortably do that, then there is no longer a worry about money. There's no reason to stress about money, because the golden goose, per se, is constantly laying the eggs, right? The eggs being your income, and that golden goose being the nest egg that's constantly laying these new eggs, constantly providing these new eggs, this new income into your life, and you can continue to do the things that you want to do and live with very little stress as you move forward. Now, this doesn't mean that you can live haphazardly, doesn't mean that you can live without a plan, because part of the FIRE movement is the fact that these individuals live well within a plan, well within their means, and they will continue to do so. But you can live with far less stress that you're not going to have money to do the things that you want or need to do in your financial life. All right, so those were some of the pros of the FIRE movement. I'm sure there's more. Maybe you can think of some more and you can let me know. But there are also cons of the FIRE movement. And the cons kind of begin in this place of unpredictability of the future, right? Although many people seek early retirement and they map out their financial plan well, the future is unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. Social programs, tax structures, they can all change. The tax advantaged accounts that people are investing in, they can change. The tax structure around us, right? And how wealth is taxed and how, people are being taxed on their nest eggs can change, and is probably pretty likely to change over time, especially over a long period of time. And so as you are trying to plan out the future, right, which is always admirable, and we should all be trying to do that, whether or not we are part of the FIRE movement. But if you're part of the FIRE movement and you are trying to predict the future, right, then it's going to be far more difficult because you have a longer time horizon that you must predict with a lot of certainty. And something that can hurt a lot of people in the FIRE movement is something like a market crash, right? If there's a market crash, especially early in your financial independence, retire early journey, then what you may end up with is not enough money in the short term to cover what you need. Your passive income may dry up a bit, and that could be a big issue. So you couldn't have predicted. That was some unpredictability about the future, and that can be a big drawback. And another thing, so for instance, let's say an expense like a major illness or an unexpected child comes along, right? You didn't expect to have another child, you did, or somebody gets cancer, God forbid, or some type of major illness. That can really put a damper on anybody's plans, right? Whether you're working or not, that's really going to throw a wrench in anything that you plan to do financially, but it's especially going to do so if you are in this financial independence, retire early mindset. Then you may have to reevaluate things. So the future is unpredictable, but that doesn't deter a lot of people from at least trying this type of approach. Second con is that some actually find retirement boring, right? They had all these hopes, all these dreams, all these things that they wanted to do, and then they got into retirement and realized that they could do those things within a few months or a couple of years, and then they're like, well, now what? Now what do we do? There are people of quote unquote retirement age to whom retirement is boring. So obviously, to people who are younger, have more energy, have more ability to do things with their spouses, with their children, those people might get bored too. And so even though you are retired, right, that doesn't mean that you should just stop doing something, right? That you should have something, again, that is meaningful to you, that is something that you are passionate about, that you should be working towards. And it may not be work, right? It may not be work in the purest sense, right, where you're getting paid to do a job. It may be some type of philanthropy. It might be some type of community service. It may be something that God has called you into a certain place in your life to where you are supposed to do something for people who are lesser served, and that you are really passionate about helping that particular group of people. And if that is the case, and it should be the case, you should have something you're passionate about, then you should go and try to do that thing while you are in this early retirement. And hopefully that can help to sustain you over the long term and will keep you in the habit of actually doing something. and being able to, be active and be, a productive member of society, even though you're not working a 9 to 5 job any longer. And so if you see that, you can get kind of restless, you can get into a place where you constantly need to be doing something, then, the FIRE movement might end up being tough for you, but you need to find something that you're passionate about that you can work towards while you're retired. And then the third con of the FIRE approach, the FIRE movement, is finding yourself unable to rejoin the workforce, right? Because if someone achieves FIRE and then learns it's not right for them, right? Learns that they need something to do, they need work to do, and they try to go back into the workforce, they might find themselves facing a challenging reintegration, right? Things change over time, right? The things that are required for certain jobs changes over time. Without continued experience, and without building the skills that are necessary within a workplace over time, then it can be extremely difficult to find a new job in a previous field that you were in, and especially if that's a really high growth field. Things are changing all the time, and let's say you're out of the game for 10, 15 years, it is just going to be so hard to find the ability to get back into the workforce in that place. So you have to really know that the FIRE movement is right for you. You have to know and be really committed that this is what you want to do long term before you step into this place, because there can be long term consequences of not being able to make adequate income once you try to step back out of the FIRE movement into the quote unquote real world, or into the normal cycle of life for most people. Then the last con of the FIRE movement, of the FIRE approach, is that FIRE is hard, right? Financial independence, retire early, is difficult. It takes a lot of your time. It takes a lot of your mindset. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of planning. It takes, the ability to delay pleasure, or the ability to, delay gratification. It takes that to a whole nother level, right? It takes it to a point where, there are people who are delaying gratification, and there are people who are putting money away for retirement for the future. There are people who are saving money. There are people who are paying off debt, and all these different types of things. But if you are trying to be a part of the FIRE movement, that is just taking all of those things and multiplying them, 10x, right? You're multiplying these things to a different level. This is, you are trying to do these things at a much faster rate. You're trying to do these things with similar incomes, right? But you're trying to maximize every dollar of income that you have. You're living below your means far more than anybody else around you. You have to look at people around you that are, your same age, maybe making more, more or less money, but especially, if somebody's making less money than you are, and you look at them and they're doing things that you're not even doing because you are putting so much time and effort into this idea of retiring early. You are going to have to put off a lot of things. You're going to have to give up a lot of things that you may have wanted, and that you may can, in a reasonable, lifestyle where you're trying to retire by 59 or 60 or 65, you could absolutely afford things that you could have afforded in that lifestyle. The FIRE movement lifestyle is not going to allow you to afford those same types of things. And so that is a difficult hurdle to get over for a lot of people, because first of all, delaying gratification is not something that is inherent to what we want to do as humans, what we want to do as consumers. We want to just buy. We want to, find things that we like, and, I want that, and just have it right now. We're very, we're a very immediate culture. We need things at the ready at all times. We love Amazon Prime. We love DoorDash and Grubhub. We love these things because they provide us convenience. And the thing about the FIRE movement is that you lose that convenience, at least for a time, while you're trying to build up to the ability to retire early. Now, obviously, the payoff is huge, because you can retire 20, 25 years before your counterparts and have a huge nest egg in order to retire on. But building that nest egg is hard. It can be taxing, and at times you can want to quit. But on the backside of that con, and a good way to round out today's episode, is that even if you try to work the FIRE movement and retire early and it doesn't work out, well, it's likely that you built habits and did things that are still going to put you on a great path to retire with a lot of dignity, to still reach financial freedom in a real way, and still live a good financial life. You learned a lot, you implemented a lot of good habits, and you will be able to live a long-term financial lifestyle that is going to be good for you and good for your family. So guys, thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And if you need somebody to help you to walk through a financial plan, create a financial plan that's specific to your situation and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, I can help you do that. Just go to my website, www.MNOwithDylan.com. Click on the Work with Dylan tab, and you can choose the financial coaching session type that would work best for you, and we can begin pushing towards your long-term financial goals together. So tune in tomorrow as I continue to talk about the FIRE movement. I talk about when you can safely retire and how to get to that point. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.